And we're back. Lamar Jackson won the Heisman at Louisville in 2017. And in the 2018 draft, he sat until pick 32 to the Baltimore Ravens. So tonight's question is there a plot to embarrass Shedeur Sanders at the 2025 NFL draft in the same manner Lamar Jackson was seemingly intentionally humiliated after being the Heisman winner, made to sit last until the 32nd selection in the first round? Recently, it was discussed and revisited that Coach Prime Deion Sanders was the person to interview Lamar Jackson as he began to grow discouraged. He was seen sitting at the table with his mother, head down, humiliated. Coach Prime came over and gave him words of encouragement. During a recent What She Said podcast, I brought up the fact that a few analysts revisited that scenario, and it was discussed that, oh, Coach Prime is the person that actually interviewed Lamar Jackson before he became the last pick in the first round. And another analyst responded, huh, and my eyebrow went up. With all of the gloom and doom scenarios being forced upon anybody that can press play and hear what's being said, whether it's intentional or accidental or set to autoplay, there seems to be no positive scenarios coming from the media. Now, let's be clear. Lamar Jackson being drafted last, it's not something the media could control. It was definitely on the NFL, the teams, the GMs, the commissioner, etc. Now, when it comes to Shedeur, it seems to be overwhelmingly the media providing all negative takes. One big box network analyst has done a 360 about face on Shedeur after the damage is done. Initially, weeks ago, stating Shedeur Sanders is not what NFL teams are looking for. But last night, on April the 9th, 15 days before the NFL draft, this same big box analyst who made a bold defamatory statement against Shedeur Sanders' character and or his skill set, we don't know because his headline didn't state which, has done a 360 not 24 hours ago, stating that Shedeur Sanders is my number one QB in this draft. His skills, his accuracy, his football IQ, his mobility, etc. All the while they were trying to find a place for him to play indoors because his arm strength can't handle inclement weather. I'm pretty sure it's cold in Boulder, and the elevation of the mountains in Boulder requires more oxygen, more training, more physical fitness, more exertion. So if he can throw for 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns and have the highest completion rating in college football, have the best accuracy rating in college football, and win the Johnny Unitas Golden Armor Worm, be a Heisman candidate, all while playing in Boulder for 2 years and taking a team who was 1-11 to its first bowl game in recent memory. Coach Prime made a promise to its oldest fan, 100 years old, Miss Peggy, and fulfilled that promise with Shedeur Sanders at the helm as QB1 for Colorado. So how is it he could manage to play in Boulder at night and freezing temperatures that he's clearly not used to in Texas. But it does get cold in Dallas. People don't understand. It might not be, the altitude is not the same. I've lived in Dallas. I've lived in Frisco. Shedeur is from right there in Prosper, Texas, Cedar Hill, Texas. North Dallas is the area. It's only 55 miles from Oklahoma. So it does get cold in Texas. It might be a different kind of cold, but it gets cold. So I would imagine being successful in Boulder with the altitude and more frigid temperatures in the winter months where it snows is a feat that wasn't easy. So he should be given credit for playing at that altitude. I haven't been to Boulder yet because I'm afraid of the altitude. And yes, I've been skiing several times, been to Lake Estes, Copper Mountain, but I don't know. Something about it. I guess I know what it's like to climb those altitudes. Less oxygen in your blood. That's why I haven't been to Boulder because I'm not sure how I would fare. I guess it's called fear. Well, Shedeur didn't have any fear. He's fearless. He's poised, unflappable at high altitudes. So we can put to rest he needs to play in warm weather. It would be nice to play in warm weather. So the next story that has led me to discuss, is there a plot to embarrass Shedeur at the NFL draft by letting him sit to be the last quarterback taken in QB1, has come about because of an article mentioned by Skip Bayless, who's a fan of Coach Prime and Shedeur Sanders. Skip goes on to say, just read the Athletics consensus draft board. Shedeur Sanders is ranked 32nd. What a coincidence. So Lamar Jackson went 32nd. How mind-blowing. All-time laughable. Shedeur has rare accuracy, toughness, and feel for playing the hardest position to play in sports, which is QB1. Titans should take him number 1. Now, this is the second mention of the scenario which played out for Lamar Jackson, which people believe was retaliatory, because Lamar Jackson was advised or asked to play wide receiver instead of QB, and he said no. He went on to play QB, won unanimous MVP the next year. So it does seem that Lamar Jackson, the treatment he was given, the humiliation, which was not a ritual, more seems to be like collusion. People ganging up on him to try to plot against his being taken in the top 10, the top 5 for QBs. He sat for hours while his colleagues, Josh Allen being one, went before him. Collusion seems to be rampant behind the scenes there. Ganging up on people, whether it's the player, if you can't negatively affect the player, you gang up on the team to make the team do what it is that you want done to the player, to hold the player back, to embarrass the player, to humiliate the player. And it seems that there's several things happening here. I would say 75% of the way to 15 days before the draft. Today is 14 days before the draft. April 10th, Shedeur Sanders was being relegated as if no other team could pick him, as if the Titans were not an option, even though the Titans have courted Shedeur that we know of since the Shrine Bowl. Relegated to the Giants. And once the Giants selected and traded for Jameis Winston, signed Jameis Winston, traded for and signed Russell Wilson. All of the talk about Shedeur going to the Giants ceased immediately. Even though the Giants are being lambasted for taking Wilson and Winston because the media does not feel that the Giants can win with them. So why not continue to relegate Shedeur Sanders to the Giants? I mean, it's for obvious reasons. With Russ, Shedeur, and Jameis as New York Giants, it would almost, not 100%, but maybe 99% guarantee that QB1 for the first time in franchise history would be black, a black quarterback. This has never happened in New York. So is that the reason why all of the talk about Shedeur going to the Giants ceased? Because, that's not what we intended. So we shall see. Once again, we shall see what the New York Giants does with its number 3 pick. So the thought is the Giants aren't taking Shedeur, even though they need QB1. That means he's going to fall. The Giants have the number 3 pick. Then there's the Vegas Raiders. Why couldn't he go to the Vegas Raiders? I mean, 75% of the way to 14 days before the NFL draft now, April 10th, that's where he was going. His mentor, Tom Brady, is there. And it's been reported that Shedeur Sanders is meeting with the Vegas Raiders next week. Next week on his busy calendar, the week of the 14th through the 18th, just 7 days before the draft. Want to be technical, 5 or 6. At this point, you would believe that every NFL team knows who they're drafting. I mean, I agree with Skip. The Titans should have taken Shedeur Sanders at number 1. But they seem to be wishy-washy, indecisive, possibly taking Cam Ward, if they take a QB at all. It was said that Shedeur Sanders canceled his private meeting with the Titans because they seem bullish on Cam Ward. And at this late date, I can't blame him. If you're still undecided, what are we doing? Nah, go ahead and draft Cam Ward. We shall see what the Tennessee Titans does with their number 1 pick, with the myriad of generational talent and elite talent in Travis Hunter, the Heisman winner, Abdul Carter, Penn State, Cam Ward, Miami, Shedeur Sanders, Colorado, passing up on all of the talent, maybe to get more picks. And I'm not mad at that. But the question is, who would get the number 1 pick? Will it be the Vegas Raiders, who Shedeur has meetings scheduled with next week, private meetings? Or will it be number 9, the New Orleans Saints, who has entered as a dark horse, as a possibility for Shedeur Sanders? And I love it. Not just because I'm from New Orleans, but I grew up a Saints fan. Working my heart out on game day, baking a cake that was supposed to say "Go Saints," and I was in a zone. I had baked that cake. I had made the icing. I put it in the little baker's tool where you squeeze out the icing to draw the letters that say "Go Saints." And I was so proud when I was finished with that cake. But when I was in a zone, a trance, if you will, trying to get the lettering crisp, I somehow said, "Go Tampa Bay." I have no idea how it happened, but it is the joke every football season that is told, no matter how many years ago that was, decades ago that was. Go Bucks, go Tampa Bay. And they were like, "Sweetie, it's supposed to say Go Saints." I have never been a Buccaneers fan. I have no idea why I did that. But that's what happens when you get in a zone, right? You make mistakes sometimes because you're so focused on getting it right. So, Shedeur Sanders meeting with the Vegas Raiders, who could possibly trade up to from 6 to 1. Why isn't the scenario being explored? Why all the gloom and doom? Why not the common sensory of what typically happens during the NFL drafts? Teams trade up. And then the Saints at 9, who also could trade up from 9 to 1 to get their franchise QB, Shedeur Sanders, and further fuel the Saints Falcons rivalry. Because why? Coach Prime played for the Saints. And now his son would move into Manning territory for the Saints, not the Falcons. Moving in on Manning territory to ignite the Saints Falcons rivalry generation 2. It feels like an inside joke because it would essentially be what I have dubbed the Sanders Manning legacy. Something I wanted to see in a Cotton Bowl with Arch Manning versus Shedeur Sanders in the Cotton Bowl, UT versus Colorado, but Colorado got cheated. We talked about it. And then there's the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21. Now, mind you, the Jets are out there, but the consensus is that Justin Fields is QB1. His QB2 is Tyrod Taylor. So we'll bypass the Jets and move on to number 21, the Steelers. Now, the curious case of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I have discussed that the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach seems to be plotted on, that QBs are being forced upon the coach, Mike Tomlin, who's never had a losing season in Pittsburgh, and the organization itself, which means the owners. Now, mind you, the owners share revenue, so they win either way. If they get a $1 billion TV deal, all 32 teams split the money, even if you have losing seasons, which is why I question the motivation to actually win in the NFL when it comes to ownership. Are they really serious about winning? Because, when you get paid either way handsomely, it just becomes entertainment. More like WWE, entertainment purposes only. So, the curious case of the Pittsburgh Steelers has Shedeur Sanders meeting with the Steelers, I believe, last week. Captions read, Mike Tomlin is being advised, which AKA means forced, to draft Shedeur Sanders at 21, which would embarrass or humiliate him. So the media believes. I don't think Shedeur cares either way. Obviously, he deserves to be in the top 5. However, there are benefits for going to a team like Pittsburgh, who was second in its division, rather than a team like the Titans, who was last, or the Giants, who was last in their division. So going number 21, the gloom and doom scenario is Shedeur Sanders is falling to 21. I'm like, why does he have to fall? Common sensory says what? Business transactions involving a trade from 21 to number 1, or 21 to number 2, which is Cleveland's pick. 1 is the Titans, 2 is Cleveland. Why is that scenario not being discussed? Because there does seem to be a plot by the media, seemingly so, to force Shedeur to 21. And my question is the NFL somewhat involved? Because the media can't advise Mike Tomlin to draft anyone. But ownership can. The GM can. The executives. Maybe the commissioner can. Again, it would be collusion, but that's what it would be. So here we are, 14 days before the draft, April 10th, asking the question, since the captions read, Mike Tomlin is being advised to draft Shedeur Sanders and make him QB2 behind Aaron Rodgers, who has not decided if he's even returning to the NFL this year. There seems to be a concerted effort, one, to force Aaron Rodgers onto Pittsburgh, which forced Russ out of Pittsburgh. Now there seems to be a concerted effort to force Shedeur Sanders, who should be QB1, a top 5 draft pick, relegated to fall instead of trade up, fall to 21, and then be relegated to QB2 behind 41 or 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who is undecided about his plans and his career in the NFL next year. It seems that Shedeur has no choice in the matter, obviously. You get drafted. You're not supposed to want to have an opinion, or maybe you get humiliated and retaliated. So it seems that if you don't do what they ask you to do, in the case of Heisman winner Lamar Jackson, and switch to wide receiver instead of believing yourself and play QB1, you get retaliated against and humiliated and possibly held back from the Super Bowl. Conspiracies, plots, call it what you want. The optics are not good. And here we are in 2025. Shedeur Sanders, confident, states that if you're not ready to change the culture or the coaching, don't draft me. There are people who felt like he shouldn't have an opinion. He's human. Why wouldn't he have an opinion? Trevor Lawrence stated that football basically is not his priority, and he was still drafted in the top 3, top 5, and just handsomely paid a $200 million extension, and he has been a part of a losing franchise since he descended upon the NFL. But Shedeur Sanders stating that he wants to go to a team that wants to win, that wants to change the culture, that wants to change the coaching so they can win, which is what happened at Jackson State, which is what happened at Colorado, and he was successful in leading both. And it seems like in the NFL, he's being ostracized. His character picked apart, defamed unfairly, and fans have had enough. Analysts are now speaking out. Podcasters have been speaking out, self included. So now there's an about face or two. Instead of picking his character apart and defaming him, what they seem to be doing is, oh, he's sliding in the draft. Mind you, they are not talking about any other quarterback. The conversation is about Shedeur Sanders incessantly. Yes, his name brings clicks, but there's so many positive conversations to be had. So those are the ones that I have. All the while putting you on notice to look for a plot against Shedeur Sanders to be drafted last, made to sit, be humiliated in the same way Lamar Jackson was. Thank you for tuning in to Listen Up Audio Podcast by What She Said Sports. Stay for a while and listen to another episode.